Please take your seats as quickly as possible. I'm going to ask you to multitask, to take your seats silently, because that means that we can start even if you're not seated. Welcome back from the break. Everybody came back, which is very encouraging. Please take your seats. I always think every plenary is the most important plenary as I begin to introduce it, because plenary 2 let me just give you a chance to get seated. Thank you so much. Take a seat and be silent. So great. Maybe just pull the door too so we don't hear the hubbub outside. All right. Mobilizing private capital for transport. How? Why? Where? With whom are we going to have that conversation? Let me tell you who we have sitting on the stage, starting from my side, going across the stage. Honourable Anura Karathilaka is the Minister of Ports and Civil Aviation for Sri Lanka. Good to have you. Welcome. Omri Gainsberg is a partner, Chief Operating Officer, Americas Meridian. Omri, will you stand up? Because I've done it out of order. Right. Thank you very much. Melinda Machado. We can't confuse Melinda. Vice President, Treasury and Capital Markets, Element Fleet Management. It's good to have you. Welcome. Joe Hurstcroft, CEO of Arkwright. Bertrand Delaborde is a Global Director of Transport and Logistics for the World Bank Group. Thank you so much. This is going to be such an intriguing conversation because we have so many parts of transportation on this conversation. Bertrand has generously offered to actually draw all of the connections between everybody easily as we talk, which is great. But first of all, I'm going to ask you just in a sentence, because it's really helpful for people to know what part of transportation are you in? Where is your passion? Minister, in a sentence, tell everybody what you do in your job.
Well,
and all the microphones are on, so you don't even need to tap them.
Yeah, in Sri Lanka, so I am undertaking the Port and Civil Aviation Ministry. So the port basically undertake the maritime services and almost all ports in Sri Lanka, the civil ports. And when it comes to the aviation sector, we undertake the airports. Mm-hmm. And regulation authority, civil aviation, and that's all.
Thank you. Melinda, the essence of your job in one sentence, what would you say?
So Element is the largest pure play automotive fleet manager in the world. My role there is to ensure that we have access to diverse forms of financing across various markets so that we can ensure that we can support our clients regardless of what's going on in the economy and help support their growth.
It's good to have you. Welcome. Joe, Arkwright, tell us more in a sentence.
Yeah, so we're the micromobility champions. We're really the guys saying, fast-growing cities, particularly in Nairobi where we're based, how do we use battery as a service to split the cost of a vehicle, so 50% comes off, so it becomes much more affordable. And then how do we enable a lot of empowered jobs, not just powering jobs, but empowered jobs that put money back in the pocket of people? And looking forward to talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to dig in a little more. I'm not just going to give you just one sentence. Omri, go ahead. Tell us about why you're important to this conversation.
So Meridian is one of the largest transportation developers, investors, managers in the world. I believe we are the largest in Africa. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about some of the projects that we brought there. When we talk about transport, it's all of it.
Bertrand, you have such an overarching job title, Transport and Logistics, World Bank Group. If you could sum it up in a sentence, what would you say?
Looking at it from another angle, really hoping here to hear more from both our public and private clients and see
Sure.
how best to support them, which is so at the core what the World Bank Group wants to do in this transport and logistics sector.
Thank you so much. So I am thinking about this role of the private sector and financing and where it fits in. Where's public sector funding, government funding, where's private sector funding? Minister, if you could sum it up, where does the private sector for you from government, where does it fit in to that transport plan?
Yeah. When it comes to the port, I'll just focus to
Of course.
ports. In Sri Lanka, been positioned in a strategic place, like it is one of the leading maritime trading route connecting Asia, Europe, and Middle East. So therefore, here we have nearly 2/3 bulk cargoes of oil shipment, and also 1/3 of bulk cargo is routed in this route. So therefore, Sri Lanka is a port. It's it's a very strategic position in the global network. But we know that when it comes to the infrastructure, so especially with the recent, there is some limitation that the government or state funds can be utilized, some certain constraints. When it comes to the private sector involvement, so it brings the kind of not only the finance, but also the best practices, new technology, cutting-edge technology. So therefore, especially when it comes to the Sri Lankan situation, we have faced in 2022 some kind of economic crisis, and we have some limitation in spending the public money for the infrastructure development. So therefore, definitely we are looking for the private sector involvement in port development.
So you're looking for, if you could say in terms of the ports, what percentage is government money, what percentage is private money, would you be able to do that?
Yeah. When it supports, it's a whole ecosystem. There are some certain sectors that, for example, construction of breakwater and other facilitation channels. So they do not directly get the revenue, but it supports the whole ecosystem. Public money, the government can invest or maybe think about that spending some sort of national budget for such infrastructure development. But generally for the other related things with the certain limitation in the public money, so we have to have this public-private sector.
Is it a 50-50 partnership, Minister?
Well, it depends on the investment. So basically we are looking for the maybe 50-50, maybe 49-51, like that also.
Who's doing the 49?
Well,
I bet it's the government.
Yeah. That's again, they depend on the investment that we are looking for. Maybe the government 51, okay, maybe the other way around as well.
Sure. And we help us understand what a successful model looks like, because that's going to be helpful for us to see how we mobilize private capital. If you see like it's worked here, this is a model that could work elsewhere.
So I'm going to also come back to your 51-49 point.
Go ahead.
In a moment.
Yeah, please.
I mean, across the world, so this is true certainly in I would say any type of country, any type of public-private partnership where both the public agency or the government and private capital, private partners are responsible for delivering a public service. What are the keys? One, is that project essential? Is it meeting a real need? Is it delivering real impact? If we can't answer that first, it's not a good project, and that's not something that we should necessarily invest in, neither the private nor the public. Two, can that service, right? It's not just about building, a new highway, a new railway. It's a public service. Can that service be structured and delivered at a high quality over the long term, so that the users benefit from that over the long term? And third, not at all the least important, can it be done sustainably? And I mean that, beyond just addressing climate action, whether it's mitigation or adaptation, but thinking about it more from a resilience angle. So can the asset, can the service continue to deliver that experience for its users, over the long term, and be resilient to demographic shocks or changes, socioeconomic changes, public health shocks, in addition to climate change. So, these things are really, I would say, the key themes, the key success factors.
Yeah.
The fourth piece, coming back to your point, is partnership. It doesn't really matter if it's 51 or 49 or 49 and 51. What matters is the partnership. So what we found across our projects, we have 130 around the world, where we have good partnership with the public sector, where there is sustained engagement, there's a collaborative approach to addressing challenges when they arise, because they will. These are complex, difficult projects. That's where success really comes from. We tend to forget that last P in PPP, but to us, it's the most important.
Melinda, take us into your world, your field, and how private capital is mobilized for transport, and how you do that, how you build it, what a successful model looks like from your perspective.
So for a company like Element, it's very important for us to have access to diversified forms of financing. That for us creates resiliency, efficiency, and flexibility. We recently partnered with IFC on a financing that really helped us diversify our funding base. And it really reinforced our value proposition, which is, reducing the cost of fleet ownership for our clients. And why is that important for us? Because, when we think about supporting the growth of our clients, we provide them with the full life cycle of fleet management services. So everything from vehicle acquisition, financing, maintenance, electric vehicle integration, remarketing. And being able to cost efficiently support that growth and that churn in the business through diversified forms of capital is really important. But what's also important for us is, we do have a lot of scale, but scale alone is not sufficient. We need to ensure that we have sustainable structures, governance structures in place, and operational discipline. I think having oversight over the operational frameworks, enhanced audit processes, standardized supplier contracts, all of those things ultimately will create for us confidence and reduce uncertainty and operational risk. And that is important for our business because it creates confidence between our investors, the partners we have, and our clients. And ultimately, all of those things they create sustainability as an organization, but they also help drive job growth in the economy. And we see it twofold. We see it, the first way being when you think about us offering cost-efficient financing and fleet management services for our clients, it then reduces the capital burden on our clients and allows them to focus their capital on the core aspects of their business. So it could be, sending capital to expand into new markets, to create and come up with new products and services, to hire employees. So that in itself will create, we see efficient fleet structuring translating into job growth within our clients' businesses. But the second way we see it is when we think about how we scale an efficient fleet platform. There's a lot of investments that we will make in supplier networks, in charging infrastructure, in maintenance networks, and technology development, and so on. And so that in itself also translates into growth in the economy, the broader ecosystem.
Joe, I would like people who don't know about Arkwright to know about it by the time we finish this conversation. Can you take us into the Arkwright world? Because then everything you say, people will be imagining how that might work in your sphere of work. So tell us more.
Yeah, sure. And I'll try and link it to private capital, because
Sure.
what we've got is cities like Nairobi, which are growing 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 people a year. Everybody, everything needs to be moving around. It's wonderful, the investments that you make, but they take a long time. And they don't connect people in real time, right? So Arkwright is really developing a model which is battery as a service. So we separate the battery from the motorbike or the tuk-tuk or the small car, an interoperable battery. So for our own vehicles, and other OEMs can also use our battery system. And then we've really thought about how can we mobilize private capital, because investors like IFC, other DFIs, see these things as incredibly risky. It's not a PPP where there's, supposedly safer, but actually we've developed a model where you can cover the infrastructure cost in less than 2 years. You have returns at over 40% per capital deployed. You've got per kilometer cost of one of our electric motorbikes, the lowest out there, 40% cheaper than petrol. And what's really empowering about what we do is we've created in the last year, just in Nairobi alone, over 4,000 jobs. And we're expanding to Ghana, South Africa, Uganda, and we have another 8 countries in the pipeline, where every city that we go into, within about 18 months, we can create between 7,000 and 10,000 jobs. Those jobs, that 30 to 40% improvement on paying for fuel goes into the pocket of the rider. So that really has a social impact in terms of what's happening. We don't keep that. We can give strong returns to our investors while making sure that additional profit goes back into the pocket of the rider, paying for healthcare, school fees, these things, as well as a really strong environmental impact. These dirty motorbikes that we're replacing is really at the heart of what we do. And we're not replacing petrol motorbikes. What's happening is these cities are growing so fast, we're actually filling in the new demand. So the new demand for your goods and services to be delivered, your groceries, your whatever it is, and then the passenger side of it. And it's really this formalization of the informal that Arkwright is at the forefront of, and building low cost, high impact infrastructure at scale across the cities where we operate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just, you mentioned something that for us has been a key theme in the last 15 years we've been investing in Africa, but the perception of risk, we were talking about this earlier, the perception of risk in investing in these types of schemes, whether it's a large BRT in Dakar or micromobility in Nairobi, is always higher than the reality. But addressing that perception or plugging that gap is probably one of the most important keys to unlocking more private capital into some of these countries and into infrastructure investment. That gap has to be closed with the support of DFIs. The World Bank Group has obviously been on the forefront of that. In our case, we use MIGA, PRI, which has been really the key enabler for us to invest equity at scale across the continent and elsewhere around the world. But on the ground, what we see is the risk is actually not that much riskier. In fact, sometimes less risky than in a lot of OECD countries. So the reality is a lot of value can be created, financial value for investors, but also, as Joe was mentioning, impact value.
Well, John, please.
On my end, I'd like to go back to the importance of partnership that you mentioned earlier in the discussion, and connecting that with the title of the session. I think it's very important to mobilize more private financing. I'll come back to that. But there is much more than the private sector can bring than private financing. So while it is really important, I'll come back to that, we should not be overly focused on it. So what does the private sector can bring? Obviously, when we talk about your type of company in terms of innovation, it's very clear. But even for the old type infrastructure, for the port, for the roads, for the buses, there is so much that if the project is developed in partnership, the private sector can bring in terms of design of the project. And the BRT, we may come back to that. For instance, initially, it was not meant to be e-buses. It was meant to be diesel buses. And it really came from Meridian to, say, what about that? Not just because it's better in terms of climate, but because when we look at it in terms of overall life cost options, it's better. So just to take that example, and obviously thereafter, as we all know, if it's with the right partner, properly structured in terms of construction, in terms of operation, in terms of quality of services, and even more important, in terms of maintenance of the 20, 30-year life of the project, you could expect better from the private sector. So for me, really, in the spirit of this partnership, it's really something that we should start with. And then, by the way, if you get this right, it will be much easier to have the private financing coming. And yeah, I'll leave it there for the rest of the discussion, but private financing, as Pascal mentioned this morning, is key because the needs are so huge that you want to bring much more financing. But that's, the right sequencing to do, and not to forget this first step about, in a partnership, optimizing what the private sector can bring.
Yeah, can I just build on that? Because I think it's not just partnerships, but it's seeing things holistically. Like the BRT is a great example. And we were talking about this earlier, is that you create this wonderful connection that's cutting travel times down by 80%, but you still have that first and last mile issue, right? So you're investing in BRT, big system, but how do you get everybody to the BRT station? And when they get to the BRT station, how do you get them to their job? And think about, these are the really opportunities, I think.
Spot on. I'm already made.
You're
touching, you're putting your finger on something.
I was going to say, I mean, the BRT project, both as a financial investment, but also as a project that delivers, a better service, cutting that journey time in half, depends on the rest of the system to be successful. So we will, the buses are in service, they're operating well, we're maintaining them, but in order to really drive the impact. Today, they're designed for 300,000 passengers a year, but we're not there yet. But that depends very much on other modalities. And you mentioned something important, formalizing those modalities into the broader integrated system, taking into account, not only the different types of modalities, but also integrated ticketing, digital ticketing, traffic management, pedestrian safety, all those things have to be thought of. It's important for, I think, and Bertrand, you'll probably touch on this, for the transport authorities to be thinking about this as a holistic system. World Bank and others have an important role in facilitating some of that capacity building, not only the institutional capacity on the policy side, but also the operational capacity. How do you actually formalize all of these informal modes of transport?
And maybe just to briefly expand, because that's connecting with a couple of key themes which have been discussed. So on this project, which is also close to my heart, not only it's a fantastic project, the World Bank supported it early on as an advisor to the government, but also bringing some constitutional financing. It turns out that I lived 5 years in Dakar. So, and I took this bus. I was there a few months ago. So that's pretty concrete for me. And I've seen the difference it made, as Pascal mentioned. Now, in terms of to completely unleash, and this project is now operating again, quality of service is so much better, so much quicker. You have a seat, you even have AC in the bus.
How was the Wi-Fi?
I did not try it next time. So it's there, and it's such an improvement. Now, as Omri mentioned, we are not yet there in terms of having as much traffic as we would wish. And it has to do with, to be concrete, a couple of things. One is this feeding lines, that you need. And this, it's part of it, but it's for the public to implement it. How do we catalyze that? That's the main one. And then something which was touched earlier on this morning, which is a complex topic.
Let me just stop for a moment. You asked the question. Do you have an answer?
Working on it. It's something that with authorities, what needs to be done. And some of it, by the way, again, in all transparency, has to do with this excellent question which was raised on the lost job.
Yes.
That, you may have some, it has to do with formal buses company, but also with informal drivers. How you handle that, easier said than done.
All right, so this reality of the private sector bringing more than just money, more than finances. The partnership is very rich. Melinda, can you start? And then I'm going to go to you, Minister, about what you get from that partnership. What are the qualities? For me, for the private sector, make decisions fast, get on with it. They bring tech, they bring innovation. Meanwhile, public sector is like, shall we debate this? Private sector has done it already. That's what I see from my perspective. What do you see?
Yeah, and so from our perspective, for example, this recent investment financing arrangement that we embarked on with IFC, it really helped us focus our efforts in growing our EV space in Mexico, for example. We really wanted to accelerate our mandate out there. And that comes with, growing in the electrification space in an emerging market like Mexico. Does come with challenges. It does require, regulatory alignment, infrastructure development, certain financing structures, and education across the market on how can we make this work. But we did really look at it as barriers to getting in and to getting into that market. We looked at it as an opportunity to really help coordination efforts. And so when you think about that, we have scale and expertise in the fleet management space, and we didn't really look at electrification as a vehicle product per se. We really leverage our experience and our knowledge in working with regulatory bodies, ministries, utilities, financial institutions, in really helping shape a framework that was going to be sustainable and that could be adopted easily by the broader market. And what we also really invested in was educating our clients, helping them understand what is the total cost of fleet ownership, what is the cost of integrating electric vehicles into your operation, the cost of just the economics of owning electric vehicles as opposed to ICE vehicles. And I think leveraging all of that, where we found ourselves really adding value, was sort of being that bridge between the regulatory bodies, the financial institutions, and our clients, and being able to really position the electrification of vehicles across the market as an opportunity to grow and expand just the big ecosystem that comes with it.
Okay. Minister, if you took us, Bertrand's given us a little sense of what it's like to ride on the bus in Dakar. But if you took us to civil aviation or a port in Sri Lanka, and you could show us the impact that the private sector, private investment, the talent that they bring is having, what would you be able to show us?
Well, when it comes to the port system again, maybe infrastructure development can be done using the public sector, budget, but private sector involvement not only finance the maybe terminal or other infrastructure development, but it brings the quality of the service and the reliability and the value added some value addition sector improvement. And also in Sri Lanka, when it comes to port sector, the private sector involvement, maybe we started in 1999. So we have we started with the support of World Bank to public-private partnership. So it's a success story, I would say. So it brought efficiency to the system and reliability and more efficient operating system. So with this successful story, now we have 3 other private-public partnerships in the Colombo port, and we are looking for many more in some other regional ports like Trinco or Gol or Hambantota. Even in Hambantota, we have separate public-private partnerships, some international involvement. So therefore, I would say that with this experience of having public cooperation rather than, I would say that partnerships and this cooperation, that give us the opportunity to invest our public sector money for the other infrastructure development to more focus in the supportive infrastructure, I would say. So therefore, it's a kind of successful story when it comes to Sri Lanka Port Authority.
Okay.
Can I, Femi,
yes,
can I-
please,
can I
Omri,
add
go ahead.
something? I think, I hope this is not provocative, but another, I would say, benefit, particularly for private sector investing in large transportation projects over the long term, provides certainty of service. Something that oftentimes we forget when we're trying to build a new rail line or a new highway, a new airport, new port, is long-term maintenance. Bertrand, you sort of touched on that or alluded to it. A lot of wins come from cutting the ribbon and delivering the big shiny new terminal. Not a lot of wins come from the difficult decisions of maintaining that terminal and upgrading the CapEx and installing new equipment, which for a lot of public agencies is a budget decision. They may cut it because they need to fund other priorities. That's part of the public sector's responsibility and prerogative. When that's done with private sector involvement, particularly private capital, that certainty of service is already baked into the initial design and the investment. So yes, it is a upfront decision to spend that money, but then the quality of service and the benefit of continuous life cycle investment into that asset, that public asset, ensures or provides predictability for that public service.
Yeah, can I just, you weren't that provocative, but I think maybe something provocative to say is that these big infrastructure projects are failing in fast-growing cities. They're not growing at the speed that cities are growing. And they take a long time and they're hugely important. They need to happen. More of them need to happen quicker. But the cities are growing so fast and this demand for connectivity for transport links is there. And that's why you see private partnerships coming to sort of address this space. So a case study is what we do with a fleet provider, Greenwheels and Uber in Nairobi. We have a shortage of 20,000 motorbikes today because the transport infrastructure is broken.
Yeah.
That we can invest in that purely on a commercial basis. We can do millions of kilometers, 100,000s of people connected every week. However, this sort of biggest demand, it's the fastest growing segment. This micromobility space is the fastest growing segment in these rapidly growing cities. But DFIs and others, a lot of people in this room are focused on these big infrastructure projects. That's not how people and cities move around. It needs to happen, but I'm a real champion of how do we get this sort of bottom-up micromobility side of things to be as important on the agenda as a PPP.
Now I'm going to be really provocative. I only partly agree with you. And I would not oppose this type of project that you are on with the largest public transport infrastructure like what Meridian is doing. We absolutely need both. If we were to go only your way, we would end up with millions of cars and bikes, completely saturating roads. We need both. Okay, then we agree.
I am going to take this moment to say, if you have questions, thoughts, feedback, please use the microphone. Don't leave it to the last 1 minute before lunch, because I want to get your thoughts and your feedback into this conversation. Let me just address one thing, and that is creating the enabling environment. Like how do the partnerships happen? How does the investment happen? And the R word came up a little bit earlier. The perception of risk is not risk. So how did you address the perception of risk? It's not even a real thing, right? What do you do, Omri?
Well, thanks. That's it's difficult to break through. I mean, if we think about where's the capital coming from?
Yeah.
There's a lot of affordable, long-term, patient capital coming from, big Western or OECD countries with large pension funds or insurance companies, and they want to invest. They need to invest. they are not equipped. And frankly, they are not that sophisticated to think about how to deal with the perception of risk. So they need some sort of bridge or enabling factor. In our case, that has been PRI with MIGA or other entities, which has helped to address, again, what happens if some sort of political interference event happens. Those events are not happening. They very rarely happen in the countries where MIGA PRI is delivered. In fact, they happen more often in other countries where the World Bank is not active. But that perception bridge or gap that's bridged through PRI, once you have that and the narrative is there and it's been proven, right? So the first project is usually the most difficult. I mean, we used MIGA's PRI with EBRD liquidity facility for the first time to fund a large PPP hospital in Turkey. This was 10 years ago. Everybody in the world that we spoke to said, that's crazy, we'll never do it. 6 months later, we funded the next project. So, that enabling environment, there's a tangible, which is the instrument, the PRI instrument. There's also the intangible. Has it been done before?
Sure.
Can I project myself there?
Yeah. Louise, did you have a thought about perception of risk? How you just get rid of that?
Yeah, I think for us, I touched on this a little earlier. It's in two forms. So we are a publicly traded company, which means we do put out a lot of information about our business. And so it is important for us to tell our story so that people really understand what it is we do, the value we add, and have a very transparent platform. But secondly, we operationally also put in a lot of governance and operational discipline within the organization to reduce the amount of risk perception that there is out there, and that's so that investors and partners understand what we're bringing to the table, and there is full transparency there, and with that comes confidence.
Sure, Bertrand, go ahead, and then we're going to take all the questions. Thank you.
Briefly on that topic, 3 quick things. Each of them would deserve much more time, but just headline. One, obviously working on a guarantee type structure. MIGA or the World Bank has this partial risk guarantee program, which can be very helpful, focused guarantee. The second, and Hector from Macquarie alluded to that, it's like on the BRT, it's also in the PPP going eyes wide open in gray area in terms of type of PPPs, public and private. The BRT, there is 150 million of private financing. There is also 300 million of public financing. Very important to see what is it that the public sector still should do in terms of type of investment or financing. And the third thing is that the Holy Grail, and Hector also alluded to that, is to scale and replicate when you can have a programmatic approach with a number of projects where you have visibility about the contractual structure, and that there will be others and people get used to it. It does help a lot, those 3 things.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much, Femi, and to the great panel. It's really good to see that transport can mobilize capital, but my question is, how do we evaluate the impact of that investment? It was mentioned that if we just bring more vehicles on the road, we can end up with a lot more congestion that is not good for everybody, right? It might be good for some of the investors, but not for everyone. In terms of motorcycles, I am very concerned because it's the mode of transportation that is the most dangerous around the world today. It's not to fly, it's not to go in a hot balloon, it's to travel in a motorcycle. So how do we evaluate? How do we have a good impact assessment on the investments that we are bringing to transport? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take a few questions and then I'm going to get them answered as soon as I can. Next question, thank you.
Thank you.
You've dropped the mic already.
I was momentarily excited a bit ago when I heard somebody was going to risk being provocative, but that passed.
Go ahead.
Long ago, I subscribed to the theory that so-called public-private partnerships, or P3s, should be renamed in numbers. They're really a P5. It's a partnership in which the public pays more to assure a private profit to the private sector. And I am reluctant to subscribe to P3s or P5. I'm interested by the title of this plenary, Mobilizing Private Capital for Transport. One means of mobilizing private capital would be expropriation. And I think most people in the room would probably suggest that's a little extreme. But there ought to be a middle ground. Taxing wealth where it exists to meet any public need should be the compromise between those who hold substantial private capital and those who would benefit from its public use. Questions, answers?
Thank you for the statement. Next question.
Hi, so I'm Devansh from Columbia University, and my question is broadly to do with possible incentive misalignments in some of these PPPs. So I completely get the idea that we want to have private capital for investing in transportation, particularly in public agencies cannot fulfill that need, but I guess there is a potential for incentive misalignment. So how is that typically being resolved?
Thank you, Devansh. Hello.
Hi, my name is Jimena. I'm from WRI in the Mexico office. So I agree. I really like this idea of like, it doesn't matter about the 49, 51%, like who's giving more into the investment. But I do think the core question should be about like the role each part takes and the responsibility. And in that, the government really has to have this responsibility to make sure that whatever is being developed or implemented is safe and is protecting people and is like not just in order to like guarantee this one project, you're creating like a lot of other problems. So going to the first question about safety in motorcycles, I was wondering if there is any safety standards in the vehicles that you're developing and in the vehicles that are on the roads in the cities where you're selling these, or like what is the role of the government, or what has the role of the government been so far, ensuring that these vehicles are safe and are, the vehicle itself and afterwards, like the use of them. Thank you.
All right, so I have 4 questions that I'm going to take. Stand by. If we can get through these 4 questions, then you will be question 5. So stand by. Let's see if we can do this. I'm going to do this fast. Government has to take a role in private-public partnerships was one of the points. So how do you look at the safety standards, for example? Who shall I put that to? Minister, your responsibility is to look after the public, even if you're in a private-public partnership. What are your thoughts on that, just briefly?
Yeah. The government, the role is, I believe, that setting up the regulatory framework so that to ensure the safety. And also by setting this regulatory framework, predictable regulatory framework, so that build the trust of the investors as well. So that means so they can set up their business model for a long time. And the other thing is the clarity of the regulatory framework also most important. So as I said, that the role of the government at the regulatory bodies, setting up the regulatory bodies and monitoring that, setting up the policies and implementing in the regulatory framework.
All right, thank you. So you take that responsibility on board. It is the government's responsibility, period.
Yeah.
All right, Devansh, yes.
Can I maybe just to add some framing to this?
Yeah.
You know, a PPP, and there's lots of sort of forms of that. Ultimately, the government is always the owner. The public sector is always the owner of the asset and has the ultimate responsibility for that service. The private partner is delivering a service. But the rules around how that service is delivered, the standards under which the services have to be delivered, the safety requirements, the public, I think there was a question, and I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead, but how do we measure success? What are the performance factors, not just in terms of the project, but the system-wide performance factors?
Sure.
All these things need to be defined up front for that project to be successful. So it is a service relationship. It's not a relationship in which, the privatization moniker gets lumped sometimes with PPP, but anytime that happens, you have a recipe. Privatization is a recipe for some sort of failure along the chain. A PPP, when done right, actually responds to some of those, or all of those initial requirements.
And expanding on that, and the partial response to the various questions raised is the importance on capacity building on the public side. That's absolutely fundamental. While the private sector has a key role, both in terms of defining the needs, negotiating with the private sector, having a clear concession contract, or even for purely private business like yours, in terms of regulation, interaction, it's key to have really this capacity at the government. That's something on the World Bank side that we try to support in many ways. And in the case of Senegal, we are lucky to have one entity named CETUD who has really developed that, and we are supporting them across various projects.
Joe, can I ask you about impact assessment? Has anyone ever looked at Arkwright and this is good for Nairobi, this is good for Kenya? Good job, Joe. Keep going.
Yeah, it's a really important question, and I think there's this sort of misconception that motorbikes are dangerous. It's cars that are really dangerous. Cars actually are.
I'm not sure you're convincing them.
I'm going to lose this debate.
I think the laughter is skeptical laughter.
Actually, single drivers in cars kill more people on motorbikes than motorbikes having accidents.
This is true.
It depends how you look at it, right?
Yeah.
But I think impact is so important, and that's where data really comes in. Back to the risk side of things and data. We have over 500 data points that we're collecting every 3 seconds from the bikes, the batteries, the infrastructure. We really can be completely transparent on how every dollar is spent, how that dollar leads to clean kilometers, how that clean kilometers leads to money in people's pockets, how that enables a city to move around. Because we have to be innovative, not just with our design of our product, but in terms of actually tracking impact, the social impact, the environmental impact. And I think that's the other thing, is that motorbikes are here to stay in these fast growing cities. Are they going to be clean motorbikes or dirty motorbikes? In terms of the health impact for a city as a whole, the dirty 2-stroke engines from motorbikes that are in the petrol motorbikes are one of the biggest contributors to bad pollution, which is leading to a lot of deaths. You have to think about this holistically.
Sure.
And then I think the final point is that we've really got to make sure that we're looking at transport systems together. So can we have motorbikes doing the first and last mile linked with BRT? That we've got to look at these things. It's not that one is better than the other, but it's this holistic approach with really data-driven risk management that I think is going to create the investable opportunities.
Melinda, which of the questions spoke to you?
For me, again, to Joe's point, for us, it's the impact that we're making on our clients. And similar to Joe, we focus a lot on really leveraging data and the insights that we get from the data that we obtain from the 1.5 million vehicles that we have under our management. And we are using that data in ways that allow us to create technology-enabled solutions for our clients. Again, it helps them with driver safety, route optimization, reducing the cost of vehicle maintenance. There's a lot of insights that we can leverage from the data that we have access to in driving that lower cost of fleet operation solutions for our clients, so that, again, they can use that money to invest in the core aspects of their business.
Bertrand, can you address this very briefly? Incentive misalignments. What do you think of when you hear that?
It's a key topic, and it's about making sure that you find this right balance. It can be in terms of risks, what risks are being borne by the private sector, the public one, or how you keep the incentive for the private sector to continue investing or to find where the optimum in terms of tariff. It can touch on so many points. So it goes back to having capacity on the public side in terms of understanding and negotiating this contract, and also following up during the life of the concession. Again, it's not just negotiating up front, it's during the whatever 10, 20, 30 years of the concession to have this dialogue with the concessionaire, check again in a way which is not what the word add, it has to be fact-driven, not ideology.
I think there's also, structural alignment. So when we talk about private capital, I think, a lot of people just say private capital is all the same out there. There are different types of private capital, and a lot of sort of perception of private capital is that it's going to be necessarily short term. Think of the Wall Street, bankers and private equity guys who want to get in and get out, or buy and sell. But a lot of capital, and I would say most capital out there, is actually very interested in long term, right? That's pension funds, that's everyday savers, the policemen, the firemen, the teachers that are looking for long term income. That's our model, and what that means is that capital is actually very well and structurally aligned with the long term needs of public infrastructure. So that capital is not looking to sell. In fact, we don't sell as a matter of strategy. We don't sell our assets to generate returns, because our investors, our pension savers, want to see the success of those projects over a generation. And so that structural alignment is very, very powerful in ensuring the success of these projects, both obviously from an investment perspective from the private capital point of view, but also from a project perspective or the public perspective.
I really enjoyed the TT delegate who said, "You don't even know what provocative is, hold my beer." And then suggested that we should have 5 Ps, not 3 Ps, and just basically tax the rich, because then we could all go home and this would be the last TT, because our financing would be sorted out by rich people. Minister, this is a suggestion for Sri Lanka. Have you considered taxing just wealthy people for the ports and civil aviation? Yes, no. He's not the Minister of Finance. Okay. This is your friend and ally.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like it was a statement. It landed well, and thank you for the provoking idea. We have gentlemen who are standing up, who are waiting to speak. This is why we have a lunch break, because we continue the conversation. We go deeper, we do it one-on-one, we do it as a community. Please take your seats, lunch is about to start. I hope you handled your resilience. You handled disappointment well. Thank you, gentlemen. You know we will be doing this multiple times, and this is just your warning that when I say please stand behind the microphone, run to the microphone, right? So you're there first. I have to say thank you so much to the panel. We appreciate your time, your insights, and your smarts. Please thank your panel before you go to lunch. Thank you, Minister.